Well, I introduce Professor Vedi Hadis is the director of the Asia Institute, and we are very grateful for both the Faculty of Arts and the Asia Institute who's sponsoring this 42nd Indonesia Forum Symposium. And he's also a professor of Asian studies. So I welcome Professor Vedi Hadis to the Day 2 Special Roundtable First Workshop panel. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Is anybody joining us on Zoom? Yep. Okay. Hello, people. All right. Okay. All right. So, good morning, and I'm told that this is a roundtable on links between academia, business, and government. Right, and I'm supposed to say a few wise words about such links. I don't know whether the words will be wise, but there'll be quite a few words. First of all, we know that whether you are in academia, in business, or in government, there are and have been for many years now increasing pressures for the people working in these sectors to actually collaborate with each other. That is, I think, usually good. Sometimes it's not so good, because sometimes it's just an exercise in ticking boxes. And sometimes people just begrudgingly engage in such collaborations. I know that some of my colleagues in academia, when they are being told that okay, your research project needs to show that it has an impact to business, industry, and to government policy, they start getting annoyed, right? So, I mean, some of them do, others don't. And I deal a lot with government, less so with industry, because I don't have a lot of money. But I do know that in government, often you know, they are being told to develop evidence-based policies. And they go, what the hell is that? Because we've been undertaking policies without evidence for decades. Why do we need evidence now? So there's a particular, you know, sort of pressure on them to learn new skills as well, and new kinds of engagements, so that they can learn to produce policies that is based on evidence, data, and not just hopefully the whims of particular bureaucrats or the sort of you know, political pressures. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a pretty high-level bureaucrat who was here, and he talked about how his agency often hires universities in Indonesia to write consultancy reports for them. In Indonesia, we call this penelitian pesanan. And then I said, well, do the researchers have independence and autonomy and so on to write what they want? Not particularly, he said, because they are told basically what to write and what policies to justify. And then I said to him, as a decision-making bureaucrat, pretty high level, I said, so was the report useful to you? Absolutely not. I just put it in the cabinet, in the filing cabinet. So that's exactly the sort of thing that we don't want to happen, right? In terms of engagement between government and academia, and also industry and you know, academia. I think it's going to be continually a work in progress. And I don't think it will ever be smooth, because inherently, I think people in academia, people in government, and people in business actually develop within particular cultures that are often different. They answer to different kinds of imperatives. And it is often I think, impossible really to actually have a complete meeting of interests between academia, business, and government. Although there may be overlaps. If you're lucky, there will be overlaps from time to time. And that is when that collaboration, I think, is useful and it does not become a simple box ticking exercise and or a penelitian pesanan that gets filed in the filing cabinet of some bureaucrat, which often happens. But the academic is happy because they get paid. The government is happy because they can say that, well, they've consulted academia, right? And they can tell business that, oh, actually professors said this, so it must be right. Okay, so you know, I think that you know, we have people from the Asia Research Center and Paul Gov in Gajah Mada who have a lot of experience working with government and industry in Indonesia. I'm sure they have a lot of tales to tell, good and bad, and they will be able to provide some narratives about how to navigate through the complexities of these relationships and to try to make these relationships actually valuable to each of the participants and not just be some formalistic exercise that happens to fulfill some jargon that is favored by policymakers at a particular moment. So just in closing, I think that, you know, a lot of the jargon about that collaboration can be stifling. And I think rightly, some people get annoyed by them. On the other hand, that the existence of that jargon possibly opens up opportunities that didn't exist earlier in terms of access to policymakers, the business, and so on, and for new kinds of research from the point of view of academia, and all kinds of opportunities as well for business and government that hadn't been there before. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say. As I said, there were a lot of words, none of them particularly wise. And for the wisdom, we'll have to go to our speakers. All right. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Vedi. Yeah, right up front. Bring your tea. Thanks, Betty. So I think before we go to our very esteemed panel of fabulous women, I would first like to acknowledge the land on which we are here today, the land of the Wurundjeri peoples, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. So Betty has provided a suitable introduction to what we're going to talk about today, which is, I think, not only how do we, or what has been the implications of collaboration and partnerships between industry, universities, government organisations, civil society organisations, and other in undertaking research, but also to what degree that's actually shaped environments around policy and decision making in the sort of post-Reformasi period, and to what extent it may have encouraged any innovation or entrepreneurship or other sorts of insights that we might not have otherwise seen. So we have three very esteemed panelists today that are going to offer their insights on this. And then I'm going to pose a second question to them to ponder while the others are speaking, which is tips and advice for PhD master's students on taking up LPDP or other scholarships to study in, say, Australia. And if they were to return to Indonesia, how would you gain a foothold in these sorts of three-way or four-way or two-way among the different parties collaborations to have some sort of impact in policy or other sorts of spaces? So we'll come to that in the second half. But first, we have Tikayasi, Inaya Rahmani, and Amalinda Savarani here to share their thoughts. I might go first to Inaya. So Dr. Inaya Rahmani is the director of the Asia Research Centre at Universitas Indonesia, and since 2014, Inaya has been investigating the structural barriers of social scientists to carry out critical research in Indonesia and Southeast Asia. And she's also been actively engaged with local, national, and global policymakers to make this sort of issue and many others better known. So she believes that, I hope she believes this, I'm told you've believed this, that she believes that problems are multidimensional, hence interdisciplinary approaches and collaborations are crucial, something with which I very strongly agree. And her work's been published in Journal of Contemporary Asia, Journal of Current Southeast Asian Affairs, Transregional and National Studies of Southeast Asia, and many other places. And she's recently finalised a study on the social sciences and policy responses in Southeast Asia involving 11 countries in partnership with the Global Development Network and the IDRC. And she's an honorary Indonesian Young Academy of Sciences member and a member of ELSAM. Big profile. So over to you with your thoughts, Inaya. Yeah. In what ways have collaboration and partnerships between universities, private sector companies, governmental organisations and other parties like civil society organisations through different forms of research, including contract and collaborative research, how have those collaborations shaped applied research, innovation, entrepreneurship, policy making, R&D in post-reformasi Indonesia? You have 8 minutes max.
I'll be as short as possible, as concise as possible, and as honest as possible. I promise to only say what I mean and mean what I say. So I need to give a disclaimer that I am partial towards social movements. I am partial towards marginalized communities. I am partial towards early career researchers. I think the structure of academia globally and in Indonesia specifically is dense with power relations. The higher up you are, the more administrative instruments made available to exploit other people within and without your own respective organizations. So I begin with that. Secondly, I began my work in the academia in around 2003, 2004 as a teaching assistant. I was recruited permanently in 2010. I've been doing this for 13 years, so it's too long for my liking. I headed a research center, headed a study program, and now I'm heading the Asia Research Center. So what Rachel mentioned as collaboration between government, private companies, NGOs in the academia itu makanan sehari-hari. And because I'm partial towards social movements, I find ways and pockets in which resources, whether coming from the government or donor organizations, can be used to leverage and strengthen social movements. But social movements and CSOs in itself is also very fragmented. There's factions, there's also local aristocracies, there are also power relations. So it takes deep thoughts, theoretical reflections, and also praxis, and receiving and providing criticism and a lot of patience to resolve conflicts so that the kinds of work you do, the kinds of work that I do is as meaningful and as long-lasting as possible. So a coping mechanism that we've developed over the years and hopefully have institutionalized is mentoring, because what Fedi mentioned as riset pesanan, commissioned research, is now structured into multilateral and bilateral agreements between countries, so that legitimacy, that stamp given from the academia to the government and to private companies are now structured into trade agreements. So these power relations are not only on a micro level, it's on a meso level institutionally, and it's also on a global level. So when there is a clear organizational planning for mentorship, a person benefiting from that research should be those who are most precarious. They need to have at least a semblance of an imagination within this neoliberal career academia, a semblance of an imagination of a future, what they're good at, what their strengths are, and have them write as a first author and have ownership of the research that they do. And that takes a lot of pasang badan on the level of, I know Linda will talk more about this, pasang badan on the level of the managers. It really sucks to be a manager and a director because I'm the first person to blame and the last person to receive thanks. But that's something that everyone returning from their PhDs and their postdocs need to take up, I think, because by virtue of having access to higher education, by virtue of access to grants, you have responsibility, we have responsibility to redistribute that access across younger people. How far am I along in time?
Well, you're only halfway.
Only halfway? I've run out of things to say. Oh, slow down.
That's true. I think one of the key messages is remember the pain Inaya goes through as a leader and be kind to her with your with how you give feedback.
So the second coping mechanism that we can use and also institutionalize is have clear theoretical frameworks in each of the research and engagement that we do. So each of the cluster, it's called usually cluster, but it doesn't mean much. It's more of a network of collaborations with across researchers trained in academia, so PhDs and postdocs under issues, topical issues that also have historical conditions that shaped it. I'm gonna give you an example of climate change issues and political ecology. Since roughly the 2020s, the Indonesian government and much of the post-colonial world are geared towards clean energy, geared towards climate resilience, giving more attention to local communities, local knowledge, and many scholars that we work with in the US and the Netherlands and some parts of Australia have been trained in political ecology in the past 10, 20 years. And the kind of terms that they use is accumulation by dispossession, land grabbing, and other terminologies that are usually antagonistic towards policymakers, antagonistic towards private companies, because much throughout the 80s and 90s, the companies that they had to fight against are part and parcel with the political economic elite interests in Indonesia and in the post-colonial world. Now, how do we make sense of this today when there are funding and grants rising in amounts from our global North partners, for lack of a better word, or in a post-colonial world? There are spaces and terminologies that people trained in communication, science communications, or those working in geographical and spatial fields that make us better suited to translate different sets of interests without losing focus of what our interest is. Our meaning those sympathizing with a stronger civil society, with quote unquote more evidence-based policy making, in which evidence and policies are informed by critical research. So usually the terminologies that we introduce to policymakers takes time, takes patience, takes workshops, takes building trust. And it also takes very long workshops in which decades of training and critical research needs to be linked with whether there are economists here, neo and post-Keynesian approaches, which means that we might mean the same thing, but using very different terminologies. Meaning, we also live in silos. We also work in silos as academics. we use specific terms to explain and antagonize people from different fields, when in fact, we actually agree that there are too much power condensed in the hands of the few, and more indiscriminate services need to be accessed by as many people as possible. So it helps to begin every workshop and every meeting with that, and end it with reminding people that that's our interest. And if commission research, riset pesanan, prevents us from doing that, voice it, and there's always other pockets of funding that we can tap into. That's what I would say. So am I now over?
Now you're just perfect.
Okay,
You bang
good.
on 8 minutes.
Totally. Thank you.
Thank you, Anaya. So I think one of a key takeaway there is, if you're working in that both well, not necessarily interdisciplinary, but in the sorts of global challenges that Anaya was pointing to, usually require interdisciplinary approaches, but in fields where you are collaborating with different types of organizations and institutions, market, state, civil society, finding entry points for common language and understanding to advance research agendas is absolutely key. Otherwise, it's very easy to alienate any one of those parties who potentially might have an interest in trying to resolve some of these complex problems, even if they are potentially a part of the problem. So, and I think having worked in lots of different fields that have both critical and applied research dimensions, that's key. I remember directing a climate change research, very large climate change mitigation research program for a long time, with collaborating with, I think, 50 or 60 organizations across all those different fields. And it was possibly one of the hardest jobs I've ever done, because it's one of the most complex and political problems to resolve. And if you couldn't find a common language and entry point, we got nowhere. So it's not surprising these are still big problems that we're all tackling today. So thanks, Anaya, for those helpful insights. Next, I would like to call on my colleague and dear friend, Associate Professor Melinda Savarani, who is in the Department of Politics and Government at Universitas Gadjah Mada, who studied, not only graduated from Gadjah Mada with honours, but also ISHSS, the University of Amsterdam, where she also got her PhD. And her dissertation was focused on political behaviour of provincial businesses in responding to political shifts, or reformasi, and the increased neoliberal economy in Pekalongan in Central Java. And since then, much of her research has focused on social movements in Indonesia, particularly the experience of the urban poor and labour movement, and in other fields, many other fields as well, including women's movements, gender equity, and so on. She has written numerous journal articles on these topics, but has also worked in projects involving development agencies, including Inovasi, with Australian Aid, ERAT with USAID, Mampu with Australian Aid, and many others. So over to you for your thoughts. Do you need me to repeat the question? Or are we good? Yeah, no, you're good.
I'm good.
Innovation, collaboration, R&D, cross agencies and parties.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel and Indonesia Forum, for the invite. I think I will start with saying that the question will be what need to be done, right? Within the context that Pak Fedi mentioned and Inaya elaborate, as an academics, scholars, developing countries, we all need to live and survive. So that's really the context of how this political economy picture asymmetrical power between academia, among government and business sectors, among agencies, development agencies, and our colleague at the global North or Australia as well. So my reflection as a head of department for 5 years, and now currently coordinating a research unit at Polgov, I feel like we somehow become an academic-preneur, if I may say that word preneur, because we are basically like what Inaya said, juggling, trying to find ways in everyday basis on how to, for ourselves, for our institution, or also for our young generations and for the future, regeneration basically. So the word I just going out and thinking while Inaya talking and Pak Fedi, this everyday juggling on to make sure that we respond to this political economy of academia, political economy of educations, asymmetrical power. One way or another, we need to respond to it. And I found it there are also opportunities there. So of course, I second Pak Fedi mentioning that this asymmetrical power between government to academia, business sector, academia, that basically we are the one that needs the resources, right? And we don't have any resources. If you are aware of the keep decreasing amount of budget from the state to the university, it's really, really significant. And that's also the situation where we are all in, all right? We are situated in that context. And I love teaching and I love my job, but I don't want to keep teaching. I think all of us would like to have some space on, part of the accumulation of a knowledge. It's just difficult to just teach and teach and teach, right? So then how do we go from there, right? So even though there has been a asymmetrical power in terms of resources, I found it really academia need to be kind of strategized, try to make ways on creating opportunity within that limited context, within limited political economy pressure. Because otherwise, of course, we can, write an article critically about the situation, but at the same time, you also need to deal with, how you go from there, right? So even though, for instance, Polgov are frequently asked by the private sector to, reset pesanan, and we are so unsure what to do, and become a debate in the internal of us, whether you should take it or not. Then if you take the political economy point of view, that will be such a reset pesanan is always been a shame for academia, normatively speaking. But at the same time, is there any opportunity where we can also use the sum of the resource for, younger generation to do something, or part of doing some workshop, whatever. But I just want to say that sometimes the picture, again, in the everyday practices, it's really difficult and always a decision based on cases, and not really like positioning us against the other two sectors. So it's same with the government sectors, right? Sometimes, but the thing is, from the government side, and also I think from the donor side, all right, they need research, but they don't want to deal with the whole FAFIFU, all of that in the in academia that is so long and for a long bureaucracy. So they pick it up person, right, and label it as a consultant. But it has a very strong research dimension that all of us do in the university, and that's also again the part of the asymmetrical power between these various institutions relate with higher education in Indonesia. So my point is that maybe that this already touched the second question, Rach, but the all point taken for this critical point of view from this political economy point of view on this situation, that basically, but we don't have luxury like the one academia has in Australia, right? Last night yesterday during the book launch of Kate McGregor, I was wondering why so many Indonesian academia, it's really difficult to write a book. That's my question to myself. Why? Because we don't have IRC for 4 years, basically, right? We have so many, it's not an excuse, but try to understand it from, why is it so low of productivity? If there are productivity, friends with productivity like Inaya, it's been a lot of struggle That's what I mean by academypreneurship. Basically, they're trying to get away, trying to find ways, strategies to make this happen, while at the same time thinking about our colleague, at the same time thinking about our junior researcher, our junior lecturer, and at the same time thinking about whatever, hundred of issues, right? So how then, right? So that's really the thing that another example, but at the same time, another constraint and that we all face in the academia in the third world, basically. So that I think that the discussion should also, touch upon that issues as well. And then what then we can offer, or perhaps for you later on when you finish your PhD or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. So message, one thing is, I think that's why we, particularly people doing PhDs internationally, we try and sneak a little bit of extra time after you submit it to try and get some journal articles out as fast as you can, or get a few chapters of converting your PhD over before you get dragged into the quagmire of all of these sorts of responsibilities. And to be fair, those responsibilities come for any new academic post-PhD, as you are, for the first time pulling together teaching. Everything is new in those spaces. So make the most of any opportunities, I think, that you get to get articles out, get publications out, especially as you're transitioning out of your PhD. That will hold you in good stead for a very long time. Thanks, Linda. Very helpful insights. And finally, but not least importantly, we have Dr. Tika Yassi, who's a faculty member of the Department of Sociology and the Deputy Director for Academic Affairs at the Asia Research Centre in the Faculty of Social and Political Sciences at Universitas Indonesia. So her research activities centred on the increasing precarity in work and in life under neoliberalism, and its links to social and political developments in contemporary Indonesia and across Southeast Asia. So Tika gained her PhD from the Asia Institute here at the University of Melbourne, and her work has been published in the Journal of Contemporary Asia, Critical Sociology and Critical Asian Studies. Not easy journals to publish in, so very well done. So Tika, we'd also love to hear your thoughts on these, the ways in which collaboration and partnerships between universities, private sector, government, others, has shaped applied research and or policy making in post-reformasi Indonesia. Thanks, Tika.
Thank you, Rachel. A bit of background. I finished my PhD 2 years ago, so I had some job experience at the uni prior to PhD. So I thought, wow, PhD would give me something. Of course, it did give me something. But after PhD and return back to work, wow, it's some other stuff that I need to face. So, for instance, Linda said about why it's so difficult for Indonesian to write a book. I am writing my book. During PhD, I thought, oh, I would need 6 months top to finish it. But hey, life happened. So it was 8 months to finish to finalize the proposal. And I don't know, another month to finish. I'm not sure how long I'm gonna need to finish the book. So after PhD, it was so confusing. There are pressure to collaborate. There are pressure to publish. There are this and that pressure. So there are some challenges, and not to mention the admin challenge. So there's admin challenge within the university itself, not to mention when we need to collaborate with business and the government. So that's one thing. But there are also opportunities. I would say that the opportunities can opportunities are available from actually some collaborative that sort of collaborative endeavor, because the sort of collaboration makes it possible for me to do stuff I wouldn't do only if I work by myself. For instance, for the book, I kind of use a resource from different funding. From part of it is from research arranged under ARC. It's not, the research might not always related to my project, not directly related. It is still, it still has some relation, but not directly related. So that's one of the thing, the resource that I can use. Resource mean funding for proofreading. Also, insights from other people from different agencies. So from collaboration, there's actually chances to talk with people outside academia. They can be from the CSO, they can be from the government and business. So their insights are actually useful for me to develop my own work. But again, only when I know the sort of thing that I want to do. So I think for me, having agenda is important, because I had the experience, I had long consultancy job experience in the past. Without the specific agenda, of course, I get the money. Money is always good from consultancy job.
Kind of handy. You know, like we've got to pay rent and things.
Yeah, but without the agenda, I didn't really know what to do with the report. What sort of insight that I need to develop my own work, and of course, my institution. So that's another thing. Do I still have time?
Yeah. I mean, one thing I'd ask you, Tika, is if you were talking to other to students, is around would you encourage others to get involved in collaborative projects, even if it isn't their focus or primary focus? And in what ways, I guess, for you, has that shaped your thinking? Like, how is that exposure to collaborative projects with other academics or with industry, has that shaped your thinking in any way? And if so, what ways?
I would say you will need to have a basic, like an anchor, like what you want to do theoretically and empirically. And the only way to get it, if you do your PhD, right, do your writing, do your homework, and know what sort of thing that you need, then you can actually have a conversation with others. Because you mentioned about asymmetrical relationship. The academia is asymmetrical. The relationship in academia in Indonesia itself, not to mention the global South and North relationship. So,
and even in the global North.
And in Europe, sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So the takeaway then is, yes, it's you gain something from those collaborations, but it's very important to come at those collaboration anchored in your own training and worldview, so you can critique them even though you're a part of them. Is that a key point?
Yes, that would be one of the my main, I guess my main reflection from this 2 years after PhD. Yeah,
that's very helpful. I might use that as an interesting segue to come to others. You know, to Inaya, Linda, and even Vedi, if you would like to, since you've sat up here patiently for the If you had a tip, advice or tip for
I'm just here as an ornament.
yeah. So rare. It's so rare. Yeah. Normally we're here as the ornaments, but no, not this time. Tips and tricks. So I think Ticker's begun the tips and tricks of engagement, multi-agency collaborative project engagement. If that is something that interests you, we've heard a few reasons why it might be beneficial. How do you get into that world when you go back to Indonesia, or even when you're here or elsewhere doing your PhD? Did you want to share a thought each? You can start.
Can I just hopefully say something as briefly as possible? For me, that is a bit difficult. I think that what Tika said in particular, since she is in the position of a new academic, may be quite relevant to a lot of people in this room. I think, first of all, it is important to be anchored, because otherwise you just get torn apart into different directions, and then you don't know who you are or what you are and what you're doing and what for. Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. Yes, right. You have to be anchored. Now, but the thing is, to be anchored actually is not entirely an individual effort. And that is often a problem within academic communities, not just in Indonesia, but everywhere, you know, that there's so much individualization of academic work that the academic community sort of dissipates, whereas actually that is your support system, right? And I think that, you know, maybe in Gajah Mada, Ui, or parts of it that exists maybe to some extent, but not in a lot of places. And maybe in the University of Melbourne, it should exist a lot more than it does, especially given the multiple kinds of pressures that are placed on young academics today that I didn't have 30 years ago.
I did.
Yeah, because you're a lot younger than me, Rachel.
I'm not as young as I look.
And in order to navigate through all these multiple pressures and somehow maintain your sanity and your productivity and so on, one of the things we talk about a lot in Melbourne, but don't do enough of, I think, is the issue of mentorship. I think to have that anchor, to maintain that anchor, and to also to have a sense of, you know, collectivity, you know, mentorship is important. And therefore your seniors are actually important. The problem with Indonesia, I think, is that a lot of seniors don't care. And they're busy sort of with their own, dealing with their own crap, you know? They're all individual craps. So, you know, I think that is something for everybody to think about. Go home, think about developing, you know, collective communities, and also, I know where you can find them, you know, mentors that actually care about more than their pensions.
Yep. Hold on to them because they're like gold. And I think everybody on this panel tries to do that. So, Linda.
Yeah, just to follow up what Pak Fedi mentioned about individual crap off. I am becoming senior very soon. It's a good reminder of. But I guess you're right, Pak Fedi. Then there are many academic institution in Indonesia that trying to establish this community and collectivity. I think I am lucky to be raised in Polgov, Department of Politics and Government, that has these strong traditions of our seniors care about us, at least partially. But I think that's a good traditions in our institution that to some degree, I think Visipol UGM as well. but the thing is, it needs a lot of how, the question is how come this institution become one, right? There should be somebody start this. I agree with Pak Pedi that the issues of collectivity is very important as our support system, because that's how we get rest when we're tired, basically, and then you're gonna get help. But again, how to start that? I understand that stories from many colleagues from other universities, that it's just so difficult and so hard to establish one community, sense of collectivity, sense of work together. But it's also a bit thin layer, Pavedi and others and friends here. Sometimes it's also how to draw the line between collectivity and you tend to be exploited by your senior. That's also another issue that, you need to draw the line and come to with a common ground on what are we doing here is basically for not just for individual enterprises, but also for the whole, not just community, but also for the this collectivity of academia, young academia in Indonesia. And I can sense that maybe Rachel also see that, and many young academia in Indonesia has a different spirit now, at least what I understand. It's there are sense of anti-exploitation, and we have this starting movement on serikat pekerja misalnya di kampus. That's sort of things that start to for me that's another part of collectivity, to defend yourself collectively.
Yeah, that's super important. So, I mean, I think one of the great principles that's evident across everybody is saying is sort of thinking about cross-generational learning, skills sharing, transfer, mentorship. And I can see everybody who's an established academic here nodding very strongly. But I think beginning with the principles of inclusion and sharing opportunities, but also learning. As senior academics, we also learn from bright and amazing ideas of new researchers. But there's a lot of wisdom, I think, that comes from people who have channeled through all these kind of challenges. But, some of the principles take away, even for yourselves, like how can you, not just now, but also in the future, always think about creating early career opportunities in every grant that you apply for, in every project that you do, even with your own research assistants as you move through, if you can carry that principle forward, because people have probably done that for you at some time in stage in your career. Inaya, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, what Linda mentioned was really important, which connects with what Fedi mentioned and what Tika mentioned. Having a theoretical grounding and a theoretical underpinning to everything we do, because in different ways, when we study people, there are many approaches. Some researchers tend to take distance from their research subjects. Some people are immersed into during field work, and there are plus and minuses to these approaches. So theoretically, what Linda mentioned is mentorship is really 11-12 is really what's it in English? 11-12. 11 and 12 is really unless you're very aware of what the social situation is, there are many overlaps in practice between mentorship and patronage. When someone with much more power than you or I or we take us under their wing. The key difference, I think, is when who accumulates power and whether or not our mentors open up access for us and give way for us to take the lead. But with patronage systems, the early careers work for them, do many of the admin work, take care of the finances. Mereka terima beres, nggak mau pusing. They don't think about the intricate details of the disconnect between administrative bureaucracies between countries. Sakit kepala. My collaborators in Australia are very sakit kepala tuh, because we have different. frustrated, aggravated with the kinds of absurdities that third-party outsourcing administrative people organizing this conference would know very well how disconnected our activities here are with the kinds of administrative structures exist within our own organization. So unless we have a strong theoretical underpinning, we become dispersed into different kinds of power struggle. So it's not only on paper, it's not only in our writing, it's in our everyday realities when someone are exploiting us because they have more power than us. As a manager, managerialism is a theory. No, public management is a theory. So when a union within the center that I lead is discontented to the policies I make, it's not personal. It's a social and structural analysis. It's supposed to have antagonism because as a worker, I have to take off my manager hat and I have conflict of interest as a manager because that's what I'm paid for. So it's really impossible to not go through this with a clear sense of who you are and also having that sense of self informed by a clear theoretical standing. Because when we have clear theoretical standing, at least when you disagree, you can pinpoint where you are socially within broader power structures and within the global academia. This is where I'm positioned. This is where you are positioned. This is the theoretical terminology I use. I use everyday power. I use exploitation. I use patronage systems. But I have an evidence for all of those conditions. And am I over time? Garu-garu kepala.
36
Okay.
seconds. I don't have the sakit kepala. It's okay. I was just listening.
It really helps to write about it. Because during that review process, those everyday experience become theorized. That's why I've been writing in the past 8 years about critical social sciences, because when I write about it, I know my own biases. I'm using policy making terminologies to explain patronage systems. Nggak bisa, itu korslet. It's a mismatch between data and theory. So that becomes a reflexive process in which writing a book is not to tick boxes. Writing a book is to keep your sanity and to maintain your analytical framework so that you're not being exploited or you're not exploiting someone else within this internally contradictory system we call academia. So I'll close with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Inaya. Tika, did you have any final thoughts? And then we might come for Q&A with the audience.
Final thought. I do agree with. I do agree with very Inaya and Mbak Linda that being part of a collective is very important, but how to choose the collective? Back in Indonesia, you'll find all sort of collectives, badminton collective, and then arisan, and then simpan pinjam, all sort of collective. And if you are not WhatsApp group and you're not careful, you spend every day just listen to what other people are talking about their days. I think for me at least for me the right we're talking about the asymmetrical power relationship. So to me, the right collective, a way to choose a collective is to find the one that helps you equalize power within the collective itself and with others outside the collective. Back to the relationship with government and business. If you are in the right collective, you will know that, hey, I can do this, I cannot do that. That's not an individual decision, but it's a decision made as part of collective. So you know that you are sharing the risk of the job and you're not by yourself. You can rest when needed. You can do yoga. I wouldn't advise Reddy to do yoga, but yeah. But yeah, that's my, I think that's my intake of the collective that will be beneficial for our own development.
Thank you, Tika. So, yes, permisi from Vedi, here's to go. So summarizing takeaways, pick your battles and how you invest your time from Tika. So obviously some of those will be more productive WhatsApp groups, I assume, than others. To stay grounded, within your own frame of reference. Treat some of these things as a learning opportunity, or to be a little bit cautious around boundaries and protecting your time. And maybe even in and of yourselves, think about how you can mentor new people coming through. And I see it in this room, actually. We've got lots of senior PhD students here to support new people coming in and presenting their early work, which is really, really great. That in and of itself is creating a community and sense of solidarity, which I think is fabulous. And it's probably why friends have come in from Indonesia and UGM for our meeting too. That's also to signal to you guys that you have support. So I'm going to open it up for about 10 to 15 minutes of questions. Is there any questions that anybody has? It can be, indirectly related as well. Thank you. Yeah. So hands up. Please raise your hands if you have a question, and then Mike will. So there's one up the back. There's one from Nova. Hang on. So far back, Nova, then here, then you. So it's still a little zigzag, right? Thank you. If you could say your name, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel.
And stand up so everyone can see you.
So sorry. Yeah, I'm Naima from School of Geography here at the University of Melbourne. I have questions. It's relative for everyone. So I would like to ask, how do you decide after probably long ago graduating from PhD and Mbak Tika 2 years ago, how do you decide which career pathway you would like to pursue? 100% policy making, international development, private sector with industry or academics, and what are considerations that you taken account for in deciding what would you like to do? And do you think that after a while you deciding to go to certain path, it's something that you can recalibrate along the way so you can swift a little bit, or you think that it's something that rather permanent when you have decided one thing?
Yeah,
thank
because
you.
I've got to take a lot of questions. So how did you decide on the career path, and is there a point at which you can recalibrate or change that path? I think it's a summary question. Nova, we're going to take 3 questions. Nova.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Very great conversation, and I really highlight about the asymmetrical power, or maybe it's like an unequal power relationship, but I want to go more beyond just academic and government, but or industry. But this is among the university in Indonesia. So like we come here, like the speaker, all of us is also came from the big university and have many of maybe privileges, I can say it.
Privileges, yeah.
Because we are close to the Jakarta, close to the power. But from my experience, when I do my field work and meet a lot of academici from outer Java, let's say from the Eastern Indonesia, I feel like really sad, because even like they didn't know how to access the resource, even they from the public university. So like it's just like a very unequal, asymmetrical information, which is asymmetrical power as well. It is related with the political economy in education, which is when we see a lot of university outside Java is really lack of many infrastructure and so on. That's
so
what you.
The comment is we've also got unequal power structures within
Yes.
Indonesia, and
Yes,
the question is, what do we do about it
among the
big
big
unis?
and
the question is what
question is then when we do our collaborative research and partnership,
Mhm.
to what extent or what we should do to do a mentorship
Okay, mentorship for
Yes,
those.
because it's really helpful. When I will
Might need to
give
cut you off there, Nova, because we're going to need a few. We've got 5 questions and more hands up. And then there was one here at the front, and then I'll come to the next. I'll come to you two in the next session. This question here.
Thank you. Very nice to come here in the morning. Sorry, I was late.
And try and
But
keep
this is-
questions short.
Yeah, this is South. I have a very short question. Like when we complete the PhD, there are a lot of pressure, there are a lot of challenges, international collaboration, research, publication, grants, and promotions, teaching. A lot of pressures on us, and society expectations are so high because we are now the PhDs. So how to maintain the quality?
Okay, how to
Yeah,
maintain
how to
quality.
maintain the quality, because there are a cluster of things and we have to keep it.
Yep.
We cannot, reduce, or we cannot stop it.
So
this is
you
a
have to do
short
all of
question.
those things to how to maintain quality. So 3 questions. For the first question, I'll come to each of you in turn in this direction on the decision for your careers and can you recalibrate. And then and maybe you could add a comment each too on thinking about equalising power relations between Indonesian universities and quality. So I'll come to you each in turn. So Naya, do you want to start? You can comment on all 3.
Okay, I'll be sure to lessen your burden.
That's
Naima,
okay.
the key is to know when you feel de-alienated from your work, whether you see yourself in the kinds of products that you produce in your writing or when you're discussing. So that's the best part of yourself. And choose a career that enables you structurally and has the resources to allow you to do that. Whether you can recalibrate, there's always a chance to do that. But a consideration is the longevity of your career. The academia allows you to work until you're 70 in Indonesia. So you can function and be of use until much longer. The second question is, the second question is about equalizing. I'm going to use my own experience in ARC. We have MOUs. We use MOUs to make sure that within all of the cluster research that we have, there is a local partner and local university benefiting from that grant. Tadulako, Malang, Semarang, and we meet the most interesting and fascinating people, much more interesting academically compared to the normative approaches in my own institution. So it's actually mutual. It's not charity. They're their own person. They have a sense of leadership and they're very good authors. How to maintain quality? My tactic and strategy is to choose a journal in which the expertise of the people in the board of editors are the best in their fields. It'll take longer to publish, but the review is very serious and you really have to think about how you use your words and approach and rewrite and revise. So that's a way, that's a really good way to maintain quality all throughout that process.
Tika.
Career pathway. I'm not sure if I actually
Back up a bit more.
like this.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I'm just conscious of the Zoomers.
Okay. Yeah. I guess. Yeah. I think I will pick up what Inaya said. The one that makes you feel less alienated, but it also has to pay for the bill. So yeah, just I guess find the balance. And even I've always been in the academia, but I can actually have a change of mind in deciding what sort of academia I want to be. Do I want to be the one that do all those consultancy jobs all my life, or do I want to be someone that actually shape the way policy is being made, for instance. And to equalize relationship with local uni, yeah, we at the ARC has that policy, and also there are different ways. I guess I'm also the editor-in-chief for an Indonesian-based journal, and we receive articles from local universities. Qualities are varied. So instead of just rejecting all the articles, we organize workshops. So it's a very intensive workshop. It's labors, it's tiring, but it's one of the way to actually share knowledge about writing and research. How to maintain quality? Yes, I think trying to send your piece to good quality journal is a way. Also work in, I think work in a collective, it's also a way to do it. Like I asked her for to give input feedback for my work, and also now working with Melinda for a book chapter. So it's also a way to actually sharpen the ideas, make it more rigorous. Yeah, that's
Okay. I think what makes you happy and pays the bills, Naima. I think that's two important principle. But somehow, I think after you're done with your PhD, you can have a feeling with, do I like teaching? Do I like don't do you know? I think that can naturally come out. That's how I experience. So that's will be my response to you. Uh, university, local university Nova, that should be a reminder for all of us in Java, sensitive with this inequality of access on higher education. I think that's really important to keep in mind that in terms of collaboration, of course, we don't ask them to be our research assistants. That makes us basically repeating what happened, in another structure or another level. So I guess just like IRC, I mean, my institution, I mean, I start that kind of collaboration for a long time. We collaborate in publishing books, edited volume, and all that, and we maintain that our network. We also maybe different from UI. The network of UGM alumni is quite in Indonesia, which is a luxury for us that we can have so many choices on who to collaborate, right? So, but I think also the principle should be equal and inclusive. That's also very important to have in mind. But that's another roles of university in Java, basically, right? That we also have other tasks to for our colleague in other university, especially outer island. I think we return to our discussion, Pak. Start a community would be a good way to maintain the insanity. Otherwise, you'll be really absorbed with so many things. I'm talking about based on experiences. I collaborate with Rachel, with Inaya, with Tika, I mean, other. And this is a good opportunity. IF Indonesia Forum facilitate that you can really collaborate and to know each other, and that's we don't know what will it be in the future, but this is a potential to have this to start a collaboration.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to come to the two questions that I promised here, one at the front, one at the here. And just while the mics are coming over, as somebody who's done both on the different career paths, one piece of advice that a mentor gave me, which might be helpful to you all, was when you transition in and out of academia, it's very hard. There is a sunk cost in learning how to teach, how to write on your own, short and long. You've learnt long in the PhD. You've got to go back to learning short. Just when you learnt long, how to engage, how to collaborate. And unfortunately, we all have to suck it up, how to manage, lead, mentor others, and be administrators, finance, project managers, staff recruiters, navigating through the system. Yeah. It's very, and community engagers, right? So there's a process and a sunk cost in that to be in the field that we are all in, which is social and humanities and social sciences. So if you've had any prior career or alongside your PhD, you're building up that knowledge, you may be in a unique position to go, actually, I'd like to do policy research for a while, or something like that. But the mentor said to me, yes, you could do that, Rachel, because you've actually done a lot of that training before you even finished your PhD. So that was just my particular experience. But you've got a 3 to 4 year window. And publish as much as you can before you step out. The 3 to 4 year window comes from the street cred for your existing publications. So when you're applying to jobs in 3 to 4 years, trying to come back into academia, if you decide the other world's not for you, you've got to have relevant publications or you won't be competitive. So that's at that critical point that I went, do I want to step back in or not? With a little bit of my own publishing history already. One of the advantages, though, of academia is that you can trial other things through consultancies, policy work, sometimes a short leave of absence, and see if you like it. When you come back in, there are sunk costs again, because you might be very senior in the other world, and as much as you have to contribute to the university and lots of experience, it isn't always recognised. So you might have to just suck that up too, and then work very, very hard to learn to teach and things. So it's possible, but there's windows of opportunity. Otherwise, you've got to wait 10 to 15 years till you're very senior and respected in your whatever career path you chose. And then you might be invited back into academia in those more transitional advisory roles, honorary professors, all of those sorts of things. So I thought that was very helpful advice to me, and I wanted to share with you. 2 questions, please. Have you got the mic? Oh. Okay. Sorry. No.
Okay. Thank you
And
so
please
much.
keep your question short.
Right. Okay. My name is Ari. I'm a PhD student at the Asia Institute. From the presentations, I got the impression, and I hope I'm wrong, that almost everyone in the academia, especially in Indonesia, is either underpaid or overwork, or both. My question would be that how reliant are we on corporate or government funding, just to make ends meet, actually for struggling or actually like early career academic like me? Yes. Yeah. That's it. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is actually the 3rd time I've been fighting over something with Ari, because like this morning we fought over the plate and then the lumper and now the mic. So yeah, gentlemen first, but it's okay. It's okay. My question is that I want to follow up on Tika actually. So you said that as an early career researcher, you've been sucked into this whole thing of working in academia, like administrative work and so on and so forth. So I'd like to think that you need to make the most of your PhD when you're a PhD student, right? But my question is that how do you prioritize what you want to do when you're a PhD student? Like, for example, I just rejected a proposal to collaborate in a book chapter with Routledge, and I was really sad about it, but I had to prioritize my thesis. And like, for example, Mia yesterday, she wanted to write the PhD, but also she wanted to network, to go for the after event drinking. So how do you prioritize these? Like, do you have any tips? Maybe. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Thanks. So how do you prioritize, and how much do you need to rely on the extra money?
And then we won't be able to take any more questions because I think we all need some deep thoughts up the front. I'll go this way this time. Linda first.
I think Tika first.
Oh, Tika first. Okay.
Okay. Prioritize during PhD. Honestly, I took lots of rest during PhD. I took lots of break. Yeah. So, okay. Okay. Oops. But I think it really depends on what you want to do. Based on your past experience and what you want to do after PhD. To me, because I had the experience of being research consultant, I was employed precariously in the academia, research assistant, teaching assistant. So I thought I want to be the sort of academia that know what I want to do. Like I want to do my own research, and if I work with other people, I want to have my mind in the what I want to have that sort of independency in working. So I prioritized my thesis. I didn't do any work outside the PhD. But after submission, I started to take on research. I applied for grants. I wrote article for academic journals as I returned back to work. So I hope that helps. And how much you rely on okay, so back to the collective. As part of the ARC, we have a firewall. So the collective decide which sort of grant that will be actually useful for us without compromising the academic agenda.
Yeah, I want to respond to Mas Ari point. Yes, that's really the case. Underpaid, overwork. That's the two main features of Indonesian academia. But this is what I refer earlier to be. You need to have a skill to as an academicpreneur, which basically trying to mobilize any resources available, network, to support that two situation, the overwork and underpaid situations, including being a precarious work partially, part time, taking this, taking that. But that's really exhausting, and I can really see that many younger generation find it really really difficult to survive with that kind of skill, because you're basically thinking 20 hours per day, maybe that's too much, maybe overwork basically. It's best, you have the culture of hassling all the time, and you forgot your deadline, which is 2 weeks ago, right? So that kind of situations that are happening. When is your deadline? 2 weeks ago. We talk about it. You know? Aku Rachel, lupa. So that's been, and every one of us will experience that you don't respond your WhatsApp because you just too overwhelmed, basically. So that's what I mean by, I'm not trying to scare you all, but that will be the reality once you enter the academia. But of course, it's worth it too. I'm happy to, to teach, and I'm happy to be in this forum and happy to be contributing to the social movement. That kind of a situation. But what I can find out is this word of you are being partnership in a way, like you were basically mobilizing things to make that respond to that situation. Two situation of overlook and underpaid. Thank you.
Yeah, and to add to that, there are periods, like even I was very lucky to do a leadership course a couple of years ago, and even the professional counselors that were supporting us said, look, you've just got to recognize in this gig, there are surge times, and it's just unavoidable. So that is a part of the job. It is what it is. But there's times where you can still say no and make sure you have the down surge times too. So it's not sustainable to do 3 years of 15-hour days and no breaks, because you'll actually become unwell. But there is surge times, and that's a part of the thing. So if that's not for you, it's not the right field. But make down times too, I guess, is a very important message. Inaya, any final thoughts from you on these two questions?
Yeah, I can respond to your question. Prioritize health. So get 6 to 8 hours sleep. Make sure you eat. If you still have that daily awareness about sustaining yourself and you have other offers, then it means you can take that offer. But if it disturbs that balance, that basic balance of sleeping and eating and actually enjoying tasting food, you need to lessen the workload. So that's my basic rule of thumb. Second, if you have dependents, if any of you have dependents, no amount of multiple dependents outside of your nuclear family, no amount of money and additional jobs would be enough. Learning to say no and increasing independence, other people's independence, actually benefits not only other people, but also ourselves. So when you give opportunities for income for other people, you're lessening the burden of you to become someone else's source of income. And that's a way to go, say, down with patriarchy, actually, when you find a partner that actually shares the burden. That would be my answer. Thank you.
Well, please join me in thanking our very esteemed panelists, Linda, Tika, and Inaya. And I think we've got about a 10-minute break while we set up the room for the next session. Or is it 10? 5 and a bit. Thank you. And then bring your coffee back to the table.